down on a base of balance of payment difficulties. Now, to reciprocate the objectives of new foreign policy, we can say that to double India's percentage share of global mercantile trade within the next 5 years, then the other objectives of new foreign trade policy was to act as an effective instrument for economic growth by giving a thrust to employment generation also. We can see that import-export policy had even tried to give focus on employment generation too. Now, the new foreign trade policy had came into force on 1st September 2004, which had continued till 31st March 2009. And the annual supplements of new foreign trade policy announced on 11th April 2008 had fine-tuned with some of the provisions of changing global trading environment, and even representations from the exporters and importers too. Even the scheme of provisions include the liberalization of EPGS scheme by reducing the duty from 5% to 3% also. Now, if we talk about our next our Foreign Trade Development and Regulation Act 1992, actually there were some silent features of this act, and that was the development and regulation of foreign trade by facilitating imports and augmenting exports too. Under that 92 Act, Section 3 had enabled the central government to make development and regulation of foreign trade, and had even prohibit, restricted and otherwise regulate imports and exports of goods also. Now, in this Foreign Trade Regulation Act 1992, the Section 5 had enabled the central government to formulate and announce the export and import policy, and had also amended the policy too. It had provided for appointment of Director General of Foreign Trade to advise the central government in the formulation of export-import policy, and even be responsible for its implementation too. Now, in the Section 7 of this Foreign Trade Policy 1992, they had provided that an import-export can be made only by a person holding an import-export code number. This was the new amendment they had applied, that the importer and exporters must have a code number too. And even the Section 8 and Section 9 had provided for the issue and renewal, refusal and cancellation of import-export code numbers, and even the license to export or import. See, we can see that Section 7 had provided a code to importers and exporters, and in Section 8 and 9 they had provided for issue, renewal and refusal or cancellation of import-export code number 2. Even they had provisions for cancellation of license to import and export also. Then the Section 10 and 11 provided for search and seize, fiscal penalty in the events of contraventions and adjustments, and reasonable opportunities to owners of the goods too. Even in Section 15 to Section 17, they had provided for appeal, reservations and power of adjudicating and other authorities too. Even the Section 18 to 20 of this Foreign Trade Act 1992 had protect actions taken in good faith, and even the central government's power to make rules, repeals and even savings. Now, if we talk about the Foreign Trade Policy 1993, actually the rules making the powers vested of central government under section 19 of the Development Act 92, the main features were that they had enabled the Director General of Foreign Trade to issue a special license to the persons whose importer or exporter code number have been suspended or cancelled. This was the new provision which they had put in the Act of 93. Even the Rule 5 of this foreign trade regulation rules 93 had specified the scale of fees to be paid towards the application for license, and even the categories which are exempted from the payment of fees. Even the Rule 6, if we talk about the Rule 6, they had the details of the general conditions to the applications of license and the import certificate issued under the Indo-US Memorandum of Understanding. Now, if we talk about the Rule 7, they had specified the circumstances under which license can be refused also. So, till now we had a look that the Foreign Trade Regulation Act 1993 had enabled the Director General of Foreign Trade to issue special license to the persons whose import-export code had been suspended or had been cancelled. Other than this, in this act, they had also specified the scale of fees to be paid towards the application of license and the categories which were exempted from the payment of fees. And other than this, they had also detailed the general conditions for the applications of license and the import certificates too. They had even specified the circumstances under which the license can be refused also. Now, if we talk about other rules of this act, they had enabled authorities to amend a license. Even they had also tried to provide for settlement of any consequences also. Now, if we have a look on foreign trade exemptions from the application of Rules Order 1993, basically the main features of this category was of two, actually, imports and exports. In imports, they had provisions for defense purposes, even the imports by central and state government or some public sectors undertaking through the India Supply Mission. And even in this order of 93, they had also stated the import for transit to other countries. Even than this, they had also targeted for the baggage rules, some personal imports, and even they had focused on some diplomatic personnel, UN officials, and even for imports for fairs, exhibitions, etc. And if we talk about the exports, in this Foreign Trade Order 1992, they had the authority, they had mentioned about ship stores, the baggage, the shipments, even the goods imported without a valid license and the order to be re-exported. Even they had also stated that the goods manufactured by 100% export-oriented units and the units in the export processing zone too. Now, if we talk about the next would be the handouts which were laid, and if we talk about some few points, the handout of procedure volume 1 and the handout of procedure 2 incorporating these standards. Actually, the handbook of procedure of volume 1 had consist of 9 chapters, and these were organized in the same manner as the EXIM policy, except chapter 9, which had deal with some miscellaneous matters also. Now, if we talk about the handbook 1, volume 1, it had included the appendix, even the specific various forms to be used, even the instrument for applying the license, even the information regarding the license authorities, export promotion councils, etc. All this were included in the handbook of volume 1. Even the last year applications was made for a more users friendly introduction of Ayat Nirat from and the creation of a window for application to be made under the electronic data interchange code also. Now this EDI application had guaranteed a 25% reduction in the fees with a further 25% reduction permitted for application fees paid through electronic fund transfer and facility of the bank. Now, filling applications digitally and the payment of fees under EFT code under the duty exempted scheme had been made compulsory in the current revision of foreign trade policy of 2004 to 2009. And the application of fee of duty free script had authorized that the reduction from rupees 5 per thousand to rupees 2 per 1,000. Now, if you have a glance on the handbook of procedure of volume 2, then this handbook 2 had consist of standard input output norms notified by the DGFT for the purpose of issue of license under the duty exemption scheme. These have been periodically updated by the committees set by the organizations and by the governments. At present, the following product category, they had categorized the following products, and that were chemical and aligned products, engineering products, plastics, food, marine, textile products, leather products, even the sport goods, miscellaneous, and even some miscellaneous products have also been included in these volumes, in the volume 2. Even if we talk about it was important to note that the exemption policy and the duty exemption scheme had to be read with the general notes of standard input output norms, and even specific notes against each product groups too. Now, if we talk about Indian trade classification of imports and exports, generally the Indian trade classification or ITC had a notification issued by the central government, and it had given the policy of exports and imports against each entry, and also a condition applicable for imports too and exports also. The ITC had two parts, the Schedule 1 for imports and the Schedule 2 was for exports. Schedule 1 was based on international harmonized system of classification of goods as formulated by the World Customs Organization. All the goods were classified in 21 sections and in 99 chapters too. Goods were further classified under each chapter into headings, subheadings and subheadings too. Even each items were classified as an 8-digit entry also. The section note and the chapter notes were to be used to classify the items. Each chapter had an import export license export licensing note that had to be read out very carefully also. And if we talk about the second schedule of Indian trade classification of imports and exports, a part A lists items that were restricted for exports and the falling under the different chapters of ITC. The part B had listed the items which were restricted for export falling under the specific entries of ITC HS. Now, if we further talk about our exempt policy, actually our India's exempt policy had controlled contained various policy related decisions which were taken by the government in the sphere of foreign trade, that is with respect to import and exports of the country, and even for promoting the exports, promoting the export measures, and even for the policy formation and the procedures thereof. The trade policy was prepared and announced by the central government, and even the Indian policy of foreign trade had a general aim of developing exports potential, providing export performance, encouragement of foreign trade, and even creating a favorable balance of payment of position. Now, if we have a talk of some of the objectives of these EXIM policy, actually some of the objectives of EXIM policy was to accelerate the economy from the low level of economic activities to a high level of activities by making a global oriented and vibrant economy, and even to provide the maximum benefit which can lead us to global market opportunities also. Then the other objective of this EXIM policy was to stimulate a sustained economic growth by providing access to the essential raw materials, intermediaries, components, consumables, and even capital goods which were required for the argument production also. Now, if we talk about other objectives of these EXIM policy, had to enhance the local strength and even the efficiency of Indian agriculture or agriculture industry service also by improving their competitiveness. The next objective of our EXIM policy was to generate a new employment opportunity and also to encourage the attainment of internationally accepted standards of quality also. They had to provide quality customer products at the reasonable rates. This is very important, that they had also considered the prices of goods too. Now, if we talk about the EXIM policy of 1992, actually 1992 to 1997, they had in this policy they had liberalized the imports and they had also boosted the exports.